Hi guys, it's Alex here, and today I'm going to be showing you a trap in the Greco Gambit, which is an opening that can arise out of the Italian game. Let's show what opening this is. So white starts with the move pawn to e4, pawn to e5, knight to f3, and black defends the pawn on e5 with knight to c6. White now plays bishop c4, and this move marks the beginning of the Italian game. Black has a few ways to respond. In this case, he chooses to move bishop to c5, which is the classical variation of the Italian. After the move c3, we are in the gioco piano, the quiet game. Now, black plays knight to f6, developing one of his king's pieces and attacking white's central pawn. White, rather than defend with a move like pawn to d3, which would be a perfectly good move, and is called the gioco pianissimo, the very quiet game, instead plays more aggressively. He fights for the center with the move pawn to d4. Now, bishop to b6 would be a mistake because after d takes e5, black cannot capture this pawn since the move queen d5 would lead to a lost position. So black plays the best move in this position. He captures the pawn. Now white recaptures on d4, and black gains time by playing the move bishop to b4 check. Now white plays knight to c3, and we notice that the pawn on e4 is defended only at first sight. The knight is the only piece that defends the pawn, but we can see that the knight is actually pinned. So black is able to capture this pawn on e4. This is known as the Greco Gambit because here this pawn is gambited by white in exchange for fast development. White now castles, and we can see that black's king for now stays in the center. Black cannot castle because he will lose this knight since now there is no pin. Therefore, black typically captures on c3. Modern chess theory has taught us that the move bishop takes c3 is in fact the best move in this position. However, this particular line that we're going to show was an analysis done by Greco Gambit back in the 17th century. So at the time, they certainly didn't know as much chess theory, and they didn't have any computers to check what was the best way to play. So one very typical human way to play is to capture this knight on c3. Now, after pawn takes c3, Greco showed us what happens after black greedily captures a second pawn. After bishop takes c3, with best play, white already has a big advantage. Now, in fact, computers have shown that the best move is to move bishop to a3, preventing the king from accessing the king side. And after this, black's position is really very, very bad already. However, Greco analyzed the second best move for white in the position, which is queen to b3. This involves sacrificing even more material. The rook on a1 is left hanging, and we can now see what happens if black accepts this rook on a1. Well, for now, black is up a rook and 2 pawns, but in fact he is completely lost. White plays bishop takes f7. This was the idea behind his last move. In this position here, white sacrificed the rook in order to place a double attack on the pawn and the bishop. Bishop takes f7. The f7 pawn falls. This pawn is one of the typical targets in chess in openings and in king's pawn positions because the only defending piece is the king. Black here, if he steps to e7, he will fall into very serious danger after the move bishop g5 check, and at a minimum he will lose his queen. So therefore, black plays the move king f8. But his position is already hopeless. White plays the move bishop g5. Now the queen is under attack and the bishop is defended by the knight. So there are two options for black. In the analysis by Greco, black covers the attack with his knight. But we should also take note of the fact that the bishop is defended only by the knight, and the queen's placement on b3 means that this move, knight takes d4, is an interesting move. If we were to take, then the knight would no longer defend the bishop. So black could capture the bishop and he would be completely winning, because remember at the very beginning of the game, black captured 2 pawns and a rook. However, after the move knight takes d4, white has an in-between move, an intermezzo. He can move his queen to a3 and give a check against the black king. Black can deal with the check, but his queen will be lost. So for this reason, the move knight takes d4 does not work. Knight e7 is the best try, and here white can win in a few different ways. One way is to play rook e1 when the pressure on the knight is too much. The bishop and the rook combine, and there is no way for black to bring back another piece to defend this knight. White will regain his material with interest. However, Greco analyzed the strong alternative knight to e5. Look at all the white pieces. They are hovering around the defenseless black king. Black takes the opportunity to capture the pawn on d4, attacking the knight on e5, and given one more move, black would be in very, very good shape. However, now white drops his bishop back to g6, and black cannot capture this piece, because whichever way he captures, whether it's with the pawn or whether it's with the knight, there will follow queen f7 checkmate. So for example, pawn takes, and queen f7 is checkmate. Therefore, here black stops the threat of checkmate with d5. White has the move queen f3, check. If black moves his king, the same threat of mate will be delivered. So black must put a piece on f5, bishop f5, in order to stop the checkmate. White captures on f5. Now black takes the piece on e5, and if we look at the material, white has 2 minor pieces and black has 2 minor pieces. They each have the queen, and we can see that for now, black has 2 rooks against 1. So black has so much extra material that if he was able to fend off the white attack, then he would win easily. But it's white to play, and now bishop e6 check is a devastating move. It's the only move that wins for white, but it's good enough. Black has 2 options. He can either block with the bishop, or he can play king to e8. If he goes king to e8, now queen f7 is checkmate. Therefore, Greco analyzed bishop f6. Bishop takes f6. If pawn takes bishop, then after queen takes pawn, king can only go to e8, and the same mate again will appear on the board, queen f7 mate. So Greco analyzed king e8, which is a reasonable try for black, but now bishop takes g7 creates once again the threat of mate on f7. And here Greco's analysis stops, because there is no way that black can stop the devastating threat of checkmate on f7, and on top of that, black's rook on h8 is about to fall as well. So white is simply completely winning. Perhaps if black wants to drag the game out further, he can play the move queen to d6 here. But after a move like queen f7 check, king d8, bishop takes h8, white will have recovered his material, and he will continue to have a devastating attack. The immediate threat is queen f8, which would be checkmate. And this is already a very, very difficult threat to stop without further material losses. So I hope you found this game instructive, this old analysis in the Greco Gambit, and I will see you for more videos and more opening traps in the future.